The African country of Rwanda has historically been divided into three main people groups: a Hutu majority, a Tutsi minority, and a very small number of Twa. In the early 1900s, the social structure of those tribes were converted into a discriminatory, race-based class system with the implementation of ethnic identity cards. Discrimination was ever present. On the night of April 6, 1994, a plane carrying the Hutu president of Rwanda was mysteriously shot down. This inciting incident sparked an all-out race war, and the Presidential Guard began a well-planned massacre. Within hours, a wave of slaughter to wipe out the minority Tutsis has spread throughout the country. Soldiers and police officers encouraged ordinary citizens to take part in massacring their Tutsi neighbors. In the 100 horrific days that followed, Hutus went door to door, meticulously slaughtering every Tutsi they found. More than 1 million men, women, and children were murdered, making it one of the most efficient genocides in history.
So we are so honored and thrilled, Regis, that you have decided to be with us this morning and share your story. We're thankful that you've been willing to do this, so we're glad that you're here and excited for what God is going to say through you. So a couple weeks ago, I called Regis, and I said, "Hey, Regis, do you think you'd be willing to share your story?" He said, "Oh, yeah, I'll do that." And I said, with our church, do you think you'd be willing to do that with our church? He's like, "Yeah, that's great. And like, when do you want to do that?" I was like, "How about in 2 weeks?" He's like, "Well, that's pretty quick, but yeah, I'll do that." "Do you think maybe in a Sunday school or something like that?" And I said, "Well, actually, I'd like you to share your story, not in a Sunday school, but actually in front of the whole church." And there was kind of silence on the phone. And he said, "Like the whole church?" I was like, "Yeah, like the big stage in front of everybody." Again, silence. And then Regis said, "Whoa, that is big." He said, "Let me think about it. I need to pray about it, and I will call you tomorrow." And I said, "Okay, that's great." So the next day, he called me and said, "Okay, I've thought about it. I've prayed about it. I think it's time for me to share my story on a bigger stage." And he said, I'm excited. I'm a little nervous that I'll be speaking in front of 1,000 people. And since I'm an encourager, I said, "Well, great. It's going to be awesome. You're going to do really well. However, it's not going to be 1,000. It'll be more like 6,000 people. So no big deal. But welcome, Regis. We're so glad that you're here."
Thank you so much. I really appreciate to be here.
Yeah. So Regis was 6 years old when the Rwandan Genocide began, and his family experienced all the aftermath that came with that. And if you've heard of or seen the movie Hotel Rwanda, this is actually a part of Regis's story and his family's story. And he's going to share a little bit about what they went through over the course of a few days and then a few months during this crisis. But Regis, why don't you tell us a little bit about how in the world did you end up from Rwanda to Oklahoma? How did you get here?
First of all, I want to thank you because I never thought that my story is worth sharing. And it was something when you told me about that. It was surreal to be able to come here. This is the biggest stage of my entire life.
Yeah.
It was really something I never thought. And then I really want to thank Crossings for just allowing me to be here. And I think this is the best church in the entire state of Oklahoma. I'm sorry for Life Church members, and Mardi Gras didn't ask me to say this, but this is the best church in this whole state of Oklahoma. Yeah, so I came in the United States in 2008. I was on a presidential scholarship. I went to Harding University for 4 years, and I graduated with a degree in computer science. And then after that, I went to the University of Alabama for 2 years, and I kind of felt called to be in ministry. And then I moved here, and then I was looking for a church, and I went to Life Church. Mm-hmm. It was okay, but when I got here, I say, this is my home.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm here.
Yeah. And something actually very interesting happened to Regis when he was in Alabama. Imagine that. You kind of had a conversion experience. So tell us a little bit about that.
I did. So here everything revolves around sports. And I grew up wanting to be a soccer player. I thought I would be a professional soccer player. And then my experience here is that in 2009, I got invited to go to a party. It was a Super Bowl party, and they said, would you mind to come? It would be so exciting. It would be food, and people would be there. And I said, okay. And I said, what's happening? They said, there's this sport called American football. I said, I'll be willing. I love sports. Let me go there. And once I arrived there, everybody was excited, but I was unhappy because it wasn't exciting. The game was so boring, and I think Steelers were playing. And I started explaining to me, I said, this is really boring. Mm-hmm. And now we fast forward, 2012, I go to the University of Alabama, mm-hmm. Crimson Tide, they're winning championships. I attend one game, and then they started teaching me rules, and I started following a little bit. And now I'm a huge fan. And I have a friend, my roommate actually, he's here. He thinks I'm crazy because it doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. And I think soccer now is more boring than American football. And even my fellow Rwandans right now, they think I'm crazy even to say that. Guys, I apologize.
So your Saturdays are now spent watching college.
Yesterday I was watching Michigan play, I was watching OU, and of course Alabama won last night, and it was good.
Good. So I knew Regis just from being around Crossings. He's helped out with our college ministry and volunteered and done some other things around here over the years. But we really got to know each other when we were in seminary together at Oklahoma Christian. And there was one particular day where we would often have breaks during classes where we'd go eat dinner or maybe we'd catch a snack or something like that. And this particular break, for whatever reason, Regis and myself just stayed in the classroom and talked. And as we talked, Regis began to share his story about surviving the Rwandan Genocide. And it was one of those moments that I look back to and I think, wow, God is doing something here. And I also never thought that we would be on this stage sharing your story as well. But there were some things that he shared with me that day that have stuck with me from that day forward. So as the video mentioned, the Rwandan Genocide broke loose. It was sparked by, there had been tensions for a while in the country, but it was sparked when the president at that time was assassinated. His plane was shot down. And to this day, they still don't know who did that. It's a mystery. But that day began a wave of events that forever changed your history and your family's history. So take us back to the day after when the president has been assassinated and what begins to happen in your neighborhood and your family.
Yeah, so when it happened, we heard it on the radio. And when you hear that the president of your country is dead because of whatever happened, there was fear. And it was really obvious to see your parents afraid and helpless. And I remember that night, actually, me and my brother, we went to hide under our beds. And we were really afraid. And the next morning, there was noise, chaos, guns, people screaming. And we just knew something is so different. Yeah. And then that day, a group of young people, we call them Hutu militia, they came to our house. And my mother was outside. And then they started having a conversation with her. And then they were holding grenades. And then they said, why are you outside? And then she said, I am kind of making some breakfast. And then they said, is your husband inside the house? My mother said, yes. And then I said, what are you doing here? They said, we're coming to do something. And then she changed the conversation. And she said, do you mind if I serve you a cup of tea? That changed everything. And then they said, okay, you know what? Let's leave. And then they said, we'll come back tonight. And then my mom said, to do what? And then they said, you will find out. Wow. And then a few of our neighbors, they knew that. They came to our house and they said, you know what? They're coming tonight to kill you. Wow. You better find a hiding place. And that's changed everything.
Yeah, so this Hutu militia comes to your house. Your mother actually offers them a cup of tea. and then your neighbors warn you what's going to happen that evening. And there had already been killings that had started through your neighborhood, and many people were dead or were gone. But that night, that day, y'all decided to start making a plan. And so your family decided to go into hiding. And you split up, your family split up. And you brought us some pictures, and I think we'd like to share with everybody just some photos of your family so they can get a sense of who's going through this story with you. So tell us about who's here.
So you can see me, I'm holding a ball because I always wanted to be a professional soccer player. And you can see my brother was 1 year older than me. He was 7, and that's my mom and my dad. And then the next picture, we have my little brothers. The little one was actually 4 months old. That picture was taken 2 years after the genocide. And then we have my uncle. The next picture is my uncle. He was part of the journey. Look at the face. And then my aunt, too. She was part of our journey. And then we have the last picture is, it was taken 2010 when I was back home. Actually, the last time I was back home is 2010. That's my entire family. 2 of them were born after the genocide. My dad passed away in 2009 due to diabetes, and my mom is still alive.
So your mom she's still in Rwanda?
Yeah, I think she's even actually watching right now.
Oh, okay. Well, say hey.
Shout out to my mom. I love you.
Yeah, you're going to hear part of her story, and she's an incredible woman and a woman of strength and great faith. So your family splits up, you go into hiding, and then there's a phone call that keeps coming to your house.
Yes. So actually what happened after that day, that we knew that they're coming for us to kill. And then our neighbors, they say, you need to find a place. And then we split. Me, my dad, and my older brother, we went to stay with one family. My aunt, with my younger brother, who was 3, went to another place. And my mom, with the 4-month-old baby, they went to stay with another family. And then as we're waiting, actually we were separated for a week. I spent a week without seeing my mom because it was too dangerous. And then that phone call started ringing, and we actually had a guard. Because they figured, my parents, they say, okay, if we leave somebody here, something might happen, maybe somebody may call, and they come and took care of us. And then the guard actually was on the other side, was a Hutu, but he was a nice person. And then he heard about the phone call. He came to look for my mom, and they said, somebody's calling, and it looks like it's really an important phone call. You better come and take the phone. And then he was wearing a long jacket. So he had to find a way to hide my mother's face because they would know. And then he brought her into the house and they picked up the phone. Then the person who was on the phone actually was my uncle who was living in Germany, and he was watching CNN. And then he said, it looks like the only safe place is Hotel Rwanda. We call it Hotel Mille Collines. It means 1,000 hills, a hotel of 1,000 hills. And then my mother said, actually, you know what? Everybody's dead in our neighborhood. We're the only family left.
Wow, the only family in the whole neighborhood.
Plus one individual who was our friend. And then he said on the phone, he said, okay, find a way to get there. So if you survive, I will see you again. But if you don't survive, then I'll meet you in heaven.
Wow.
And then my mother left. But since she couldn't get a hold of my dad, there's no way we could meet with her. So she actually wrote a note, and then she sent it to my dad. She said, actually, there's a safe place in Mille Collines, Hotel Rwanda. I don't know how we're going to get there, but I think it will be a safe place to do that. And then my dad said it's too dangerous. Then he decided, he said, you know what? It's better to die in our neighborhood. Let's just stay. So the initial thought was to stay in our neighborhood.
So some things began to change that night. The violence ramps up, it becomes even more dangerous. And so at that point, they change their mind and decide our best chance is to try and make it to the Hotel Rwanda. And the hotel's, I think you shared roughly 25-minute drive from your house, from your neighborhood. And so the next morning, you guys get in a car, and about 9 a.m., you begin your journey from your home neighborhood to try and make it to the Hotel Rwanda. And what's happening in the country at this time is there are roadblocks that are being set up everywhere. And these roadblocks are used to check the people in the cars to see if they're Hutu or if they're Tutsi. And if they're Tutsi, basically they would pull them out of their cars and they would kill them at these roadblocks. And so you knew, your family knew this was going to be a dangerous journey. And you hit a couple checkpoints on your way. So why don't you take us through what happened at this first checkpoint?
Yeah, the first one, so actually the night we left, they decided, my dad changed their mind because there was this announcement that they wanted everybody to evacuate their house to go. And then we said, okay, now we know where to go. Let's go to the hotel and you see, we don't know if we're going to make it. So the next day then we left around 9 a.m. in the morning. And as you go, there's a long traffic. They have to check your IDs, these checkpoints, to know who you are. Because to know if you're a Tutsi or a Hutu. So they're checking many cars, and then they ask, this is the question they will ask everybody, say, are you good? Which meant, do you have Hutus in your car? Which means if you're a Hutu, you have a free pass. So, and then they got to our car, and my uncle was actually driving because my dad was sick. He had diabetes. He had spent almost a week without medication. And they got to us, and they said, where are your IDs? My uncle said, I don't have any, but he refused. And then I asked my dad, he refused to, and my mom, and they said, we don't have IDs. And they say, these people, they are Tutsis. And then they say, you need to pour out the car, and you just go outside. So then we got out of the car, we sat down, waiting. And in their conversations, they start talking about how are we going to kill them.
So this is the Hutu militia.
The Hutu militia, they're asking now, they're still debating. So they had knives, they had guns, they had spears, they had gasoline, they had machetes. Actually, I remember seeing one who was actually sharpening one of the machete on a big stone.
And so you're 6 years old.
Yeah, I was 6 and my brother is 7. And as they were deciding what to do, actually they said, you know what, let's just use knives. And the other said, oh, no. Let's just use gasoline. They started pouring it on each one of us. And then another guy said, no, we are not going to do it. Because if we burn them alive, they would smell. So then my older brother started crying. And he started crying, and he said, Mom, are we going to die? And I started crying too, because I said, oh, we're going to be killed here.
Yeah.
And what do you tell somebody who's 6 years old or 7? Out of nowhere, she just said, don't worry. Being killed is not painful. We stopped crying. And actually one guy overheard the conversation and then said, okay, did you hear what you just said? Being dead is not painful? And then they asked her, so have you died before? And then my mother was a little bit silent. So they kept pushing and confronting and said, tell us if you've been dead before. She said, I know one thing. If we die here, we'll be safe. We'll be in the hands of God and no pain. That moved them. They said, this woman is crazy.
Yeah.
She's not afraid. Because they had killed so many people to the point that to find somebody who was strong like my mom, to be that voice of courage, voice of hope, it was really incredible to see that. Because of that, that just what my mom said, you know what, we're not going to kill you. You just leave. But we know if you leave, the next checkpoint, they will get you. And then they'll out.
So the Hutu, they overhear this conversation, and your mom says, don't be afraid. Death is not painful. For when you die, you'll fall into the hands of God. They hear this, and that actually leads to you guys being let go from that checkpoint. So what an incredible moment. I mean, your mother's strength, she spoke truth to you guys, and it had incredible courage. But this was only the first checkpoint, and you come to another one. So walk us through what happens after that.
So and then the next one was actually a few miles, and we encountered this one, and there were younger people there with stones and grenades. And my uncle, he was actually driving, and he said, you know what, this one is less dangerous. And they tried to find a way to escape it. He kind of tricked them a little bit. He slowed down the car, and when they were coming towards us, he kind of took off like he plowed through. It was like a movie. It would make a good movie, actually, if we do that. I will be rich now if I write a script and I send to Hollywood. That would be so different. And then we just plowed through that.
Wow.
And then they came after us with, they started throwing stones at us. And it's really interesting that they didn't use the grenades they had. Still now, maybe it's God's grace, it is, but they just use stones and they say, okay, and then we escaped that one.
So that's checkpoint 2.
Number two.
You make it through that. You're still traveling, still very dangerous, and you come up to an even worse, an even more dangerous checkpoint number 3. So tell us what happened.
So the number 3 one was, was the most dangerous. It was, there was no way we could escape it. And my parents would say, every time they would say checkpoint, they say, this is over. Now it's time to die now. And then we kind of, my uncle, as I was driving, he didn't even bother to try what he did the first one.
Yeah.
And then he kind of stopped the car. And then we had to get out of the car without even, because we knew.
So you get there and you
done.
just get out of the car.
It's a
and
done
you're
deal. We
thinking,
knew it was a done deal. It was done. Then a guy, a chief of the crew, like, who was the chief there, he was wearing a hat. And then he took it off because he recognized my dad's car.
And this is the chief of the Hutu militia.
The
at
Hutu
this
militia, yes.
checkpoint.
He recognized it. He said, I know this car. And then he saw my dad coming out of the car. And then he came and he started shaking hands.
With your father?
Yes.
Wow.
And guess who that guy was? He used to be my father's housekeeper. He used to work for him. And then my dad said, oh, you're killing too? And he said, yeah, this is my job now. And again, my mom, you know, she's the one who's courageous, she's the one who's talking, she's the one who's meeting all this. And then she went to him and he said, you know what? I am actually thankful because this time we're going to be killed by a friend. Because it's better to be killed by a friend than to be killed by a stranger. And then she said, please, make this less painful. And he said, no. He said, I can't do this because I know how you treated my life. I know you gave me a job. I know you did everything good to me. You've been so nice to me then. There's no way I can do such a thing. And actually at the time, our car started having a smoke out of the engine because the car had been inactive for almost 2 weeks. And we were so hungry and so exhausted. And then he actually said, you know what? I see these little ones are really, actually he knew my name and my brothers. And you come and say, hey, Regis, say, and you just look at him and blood everywhere. And then you say, oh my God. And then he went to get us candies and water. And actually went to get water for the car too. And after that, and then he said, where are you going? They said, we're going to the Hotel Rwanda. And he said, wow, I don't know if he will survive the next checkpoint. And then my mother said, why don't you go with us so that you can save us again? He said, I can't because I am working right now. And working means killing people. And you could see just dead bodies everywhere. And then he said, you know what, if you keep going this route, they will kill you. He said, use this one. That checkpoint is less dangerous, but it looks like God has saved you already. He might. And then he said, if you survive this last one, hopefully I will see you. But actually he's dead. He was killed during the genocide. Wow. And then we left.
So the Hutu militia that was there to kill you recognized your father. He used to work for your father and decides to let you guys go. So that was the third checkpoint. But the story's not over yet. You come to a fourth checkpoint. Yeah, what happens there?
We came to the fourth, and the fourth was the last one. And you escape the first one, you say it's over, we did. The second one, it's over. The third one, again, it's over. The fourth one, you don't even say anything. We got there, we stopped the car. My parents didn't even talk to those guys. He just got there, you just park the car, you get outside, you sit down, you just wait. And as you wait, there are people around there, and you know. And as we were waiting and waiting, we saw UN tanks, United Nations tanks, coming. And then they kind of saw my mother holding a baby, and they started speaking in English. My parents didn't know English, but my uncle actually could understood a little bit of it. And they were saying, let's save them, let's save them. Yeah. They kind of pulled over and they stopped their tanks. They came outside, and then they went to talk to the crew, to those guys who were going to kill us. And they started arguing. They started actually rebuking them and said, how can you kill them? Look, they have a 4-month-old baby, how? And they started arguing and arguing and arguing with them and said, you're not going to touch them. We're going to find a way to save them. And after they came to our parents, they said, where are you going? My parents, they said, we're going to the Hotel Rwanda. And then they said, okay, let's change our plans. So we're going to find a way to get you there. The car, they were driving, they said, okay, they put it in the middle, in between, and we had one tank in front and the other behind. They started escorting us all the way to to the hotel.
So
And then we reached to that.
you've got a UN escort
Yes.
between two tanks to get you to the hotel. Unbelievable. It's crazy. But the story's not over.
It's
because
not over.
once you make it to the hotel, it's still a very dangerous situation. So give us just a little bit of insight to what it was like being at the hotel.
Yeah, so you get there, your dad, actually the other day I was talking to my mom to make sure that the story I tell you is accurate. We were on the phone for 2 hours and 30 minutes. As she was telling me the story again, I felt like a little bit emotional because what really made me emotional is how she said, when we reached the hotel, there's a 4-month-old baby, you understand, it's no food, nothing to eat. But actually the real issue was my dad because he had diabetes. It's been there with no medication. You know, when he was on insulin injections and you know, they have to be in the fridge. So my dad actually was really weak. And then he said, we knew that he would just die there, over there. So now my mom is looking for water. So when you have diabetes, some of you know, you get thirsty. And then my mom, again, she's like the main actor of the story. She goes around the hotel looking for water. She couldn't find it. And then she went outside. She found actually people were drinking water from the swimming pool. And then she said, that's a good idea. So she went to grab a few cups, and then we started drinking from the swimming pool. For almost 2 days, like water, and those few crackers we got from the guy for 2 days. And then she was trying to figure out, so how are we going to be eating? And then she found out how actually there was a restaurant upstairs for people who had money. And then she said, let me see if I can go get something. She went upstairs and she started talking to the chef. And they said, do you have money? My mother said, no. Said, we can't just feed you because we have so many people who come with money. And then she figured out something. She's really smart. She just said, you know what? And she looked around and saw how they do it. Actually, they would eat a lot of leftovers. She figured out time to go when there are all leftovers. Then she decided to go. Every time there are leftovers, she would go upstairs and grab food and come and feed us.
So she found the food and the water for your family.
Yes.
And you're at the Hotel Rwanda for?
We were there for almost 2 weeks.
Almost 2 weeks. And then eventually, they moved you guys to what's now known as the village. This was a refugee camp that was guarded and protected. Eventually, y'all make it to the village, and you're there for how much longer?
So we're there until the genocide was over. So we were there, and the thing is, when we went to the refugee camp, now you're saying, oh, there is hope that we can actually survive.
Yeah.
Now there's hope. Now you say, okay, we don't care about food, we don't care. So now it looks like there's slim hope for us to survive. We're there and waiting and waiting and waiting, looking for food. And the interesting thing is, actually the house we stayed in that refugee camp, we had to, so when we went there, it was really smelling because there were so many dead bodies. So my parents, they actually had to move out dead bodies first. Like to move out so that they start cleaning. And then we're sitting there and no clothes, nothing to wear. It's just one clothes and you're just happy. In my mind, because I would look at my mom with just we're wearing this fabric outfit, we call it ibitenge. She was wearing, like she didn't have just one outfit. In my mind, I would say, my gosh, I need to get my mother something. So I actually went to one house to steal one. I did steal one from a friend. And then I brought to my mother, I said, here's something you need to wear. She was moved. I said, Mom, don't worry. If the genocide is over, I'll find you something to wear. She was laughing.
Yeah.
She says, understand. And then we waited until it was over. Then we left.
So the aftermath of the genocide, the country is basically destroyed. Kind of walk us through how you personally have engaged topics of forgiveness and how, when you became a Christian, that began to shape how you thought about your past.
Yeah, so when it's done, it's a struggle. Like you start thinking about. The question is why this happened to us, why I don't have a grandparent, why I don't have, like my mother. I was talking to her. I said, "What do you think?" She said, "The question she always asks herself is, why I don't have parents too? Because what did I do to deserve this?" And as you go through that, it's hard to forgive, and it's a challenge we have in the country right now. But we're kind of moving on. And something you start learning is reality doesn't give anything back. So you have to embrace it. And that's the journey for us as a family, as an individual, even as a country. And you start learning about forgiveness, that it's just a commitment. It's just not a feeling. It's more than just a feeling. It's a commitment you have to make. And for me, I became a real Christian when I was 14, 15. The biggest challenge was actually to allow the power of God's love and God's truth to mold my heart, actually to reshape my perspective. And once you go through that, you start understanding, okay, you actually have to discover it. Number one, when I have an unforgiving spirit, it really eats you up, like it dries your bones. You can't survive with that. And then the second thing you learn is human love doesn't have like a full capacity to love your enemies, actually to forgive. So you know that you need something supernatural to help you go through that. And for us, that's the challenge. And it's really interesting because when you look at that, I came in 2008. Who am I going to find here? My Rwandan community. It doesn't matter if they're Tutsi, it doesn't matter if they're Hutus. Those are the people you share the same history. And you say, we have to be one. And I'm really excited because here at our Kaoma Christian University, we have a community of Rwandans. So we meet every Friday night. We sing in our native language. We sing in our mother tongue. We hear the word of God together. And we just is this new community. And the same thing that is happening back home. And shout out to them. Some of them are here. Shout out to you guys. I've seen some faces. And that's the struggle. So you have to embrace it because reality doesn't give you anything back. You gotta go through it.
So as Regis and me were talking over the last couple of weeks, we wanted to give just some practical steps that you guys can take in your own life. And we know that not all of us, or very few of us, can relate to what Regis and his family and those in his country have been through. However, all of us have things in our past that shape us and impact us. And we're given the opportunity to engage that and grow beyond it. I love it when Regis talks about, I'm not Tutsi, I am Rwandan. And even more importantly than that, I am a son of God. I am a Christian. And that message is incredibly powerful. So there on your note page, just 3 practical steps that you can take. The first one is when you're ready to start engaging your past, don't try to do it alone. Don't try to do it by yourself. It's hard work. And as Regis mentioned too, this work is still going on in his country and the people there. There's still things that they have to work through from this genocide that happened. And secondly, don't minimize. When we minimize the past or things in our past, we have a tendency to overlook the impact they've had on us. It's the truth that sets us free. And so if we're going to engage overcoming our past, we have to be willing to look at the truth of what happened to us or things that we've done to other people. And then lastly, as Christians, we're called to engage the process and the commitment of forgiveness. It's a process, it's a commitment. Like Regis said, it's not a feeling. Forgiveness isn't a feeling, but it's a commitment to live differently because of what God has done for us. So those are 3 steps that we can take as a church, and there's many opportunities for y'all to engage those on Monday nights in Care Series, Tuesday nights in the gathering, Wednesday nights here at the church in classes and community groups, Thursday nights in Celebrate Recovery, maybe a Sunday school, maybe it's time to get plugged into a small group. There's a lot of opportunities for us to engage this stuff. So Regis, man, I just thank you so much for sharing your story. Will you help me in thanking him for being willing to share it? So I was talking with Regis this week, and Regis is following a call to the ministry. And he said, I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do, but I've always thought that maybe someday I will speak. And he didn't know it was going to happen this weekend. But we talked about how God is beginning to shape his voice, to be a voice of hope to those around the world. And I've asked Regis if he would pray for us before we go. And at the end of the service today, our prayer teams and pastors are going to be up here at front. And if you're ready to start engaging something in your past that has had an impact on you or that has kept you back from growing into the fullness of life that God promises, we ask that when we dismiss, come down front. We'd love to pray for you. We'd love to hear your story and walk alongside you in experiencing healing and experiencing growth in your life. One of the more powerful experiences that I've had is when I get to travel to different countries and get to hear people in their native language pray and praise and sing and preach. I don't understand what they're saying, but you recognize the spirit of what they're saying. So I've asked Regis if he would pray over us in his native tongue, and we're going to close with that this morning. So prayer teams, if you'll come to the front as we do that.
Let's pray. Mana turagushimira ko ugira neza, ndagushimiye ko ubwira itorero. Ndasengera buri muntu kugira ngo umuhe imbaraga zo kugendera mu rukundo rwawe, mu mbaraga z'umudendezo utanga, mu mbaraga z'amahoro utanga, no mu mbaraga z'imbabazi utanga. God, I thank you so much for this church. I pray for each one and everyone here, that we may walk in the power of your love, in the power of your freedom, in the power of the life that you've made available to us. Because we know that, God, you have power to transform our lives. We thank you so much as we embrace the past and the past mistakes and the wounds of the past. We ask you, God, that you change us. And let's leave this place encouraged, strengthened, and comforted by your Spirit. In the mighty name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Amen. Well, you guys have a great week. Yeah, thank you again. Thank you, God.